Okay, so let's quickly talk about this. This is something that's been popping up. I very quickly want to go to YouTube because I actually did ask a question in the community tab. Let's go to create a post. We can also go to Twitter because I asked the exact same thing on Twitter. I sort of put out a post earlier today, right? I took the worst case scenario and I said, okay, let's imagine that patch 9.1 comes out in August. This was worst case scenario because this was released, I think, yesterday. I saw it yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. So yesterday, they released this. Patch 9.1 is coming in about 2 weeks. That puts patch 9.1 at about the 14th, right? So at about the 14th, the 13th, 14th, we should get patch 9.1. They released this. I looked at it and I immediately said, okay, hold up. We have to be very careful with what we believe here, what we think is going to happen, and how we think that is going to happen. So all of you part of this conversation, as always, you know it, wave hello to YouTube because this is most likely going up on YouTube. When is patch 9.1 actually coming out? Now, I asked this question over on YouTube and I also asked it on Twitter. And it was a very simple question, a bit long, but very simple question. If patch 9.1 comes out at the earliest, August, right? Which I don't necessarily think is going to be August. I think August is actually a little bit late. But let's imagine August because we have Towley, which I think a lot of people need to keep in mind as well. We have Towley that has people inside Blizzard. So Towley have friends inside Blizzard who told him during BlizzCon July, June would be optimistic. They think closer to August. The patch is very far from being done. There's no way that they're giving us 9.1 June, July, right? This is what Towley's contacts told him. August is a more realistic proposal. So I said, okay, imagine that it is August. How do people feel about it? And I gave people a bunch of options. I am still playing patch 9.1. Patch 9.1 will be awesome. About 19% of the 438 votes since this afternoon. That's how they felt. 12% of them said, I am still playing, but I have my doubts about patch 9.1. 28%, I will quit until patch 9.1 comes out. 20%, I have quit Shadowlands and will not be back. And 21% just said, August, what the fuck is this? Which also makes sense. On Twitter, we had 163 votes since about 4 hours ago, asking the exact same thing. And you can see here, who cares? WoW is live, 28%. Patch 9.1 going to be worth, 19%. Quit until patch 9.1, 36%. And I am done for good, 15%. One thing that needs to be taken away from this is a lot of people seem to be done, which is sort of problematic, at least for someone that is a content creator. It is sort of bad when almost 600 plus people in your community, of that 600 plus people, 20% of them on average, let's say 18% of them is quitting World of Warcraft for good. So clearly, I think you're always going to have your portion of people that just keeps playing the game. They don't really give a shit whether the game takes 6 months, 10 months, however long, doesn't matter. They play WoW. They're not going to play anything else. Then, of course, you have different people who don't do that. But as you can see, for most people, August is a very long time away. And for most people, that is a bit of a bother, right? Most people don't like the fact that it's going to be in August. What does this mean, though? What does 9.1 PTR going live in 2 weeks mean for when Shadowlands patch 9.1 will actually release? The answer? Everything that Wowhead set up here is absolutely useless. Not Wowhead's fault. They were simply drawing conclusions. They were simply trying to say, you know, this is sort of how long it takes for the average patch to go from PTR to live. It's useless. It is completely and utterly useless, and there's a number of reasons for it. First and foremost, the state of the world around us. Most companies are still stuck working from home, and while a lot of companies have managed to get to sort of a rhythm working from home, I can guarantee you there's almost not a single company in the world that works from home at the same speed as they do from an office. There is just unfortunate kinks in that chain. Things that you can't you can't deal with. Someone's internet goes down at the time that they need to have a Zoom meeting about a very important aspect of the patch. Now the Zoom meeting can only happen tomorrow because this very important person doesn't have internet to actually be at the meeting. There's a whole slew of things that could go wrong. People might be slacking, spending some time with their family, so they're not working as hard as they should be working. There's all sorts of things that just slows down the overall speed to which things happen during COVID. So that's the first reason why I think generally speaking, whenever a patch hits PTR, it's usually about 2 to 2.5 months before the patch hits live. That's almost always the going speed at which a new patch will hit live from PTR. Is that going to happen? No. Just based on COVID, there is absolutely zero chance. Well, don't want to say zero. Let's say there's about a 20% chance that this thing comes out in 2.5 months from now. I highly doubt that it will, because there's other things that I think impacts this. Now, I want to caveat everything that I'm about to tell you with it's gonna depend on what we get in 2 weeks' time on the PTR. So I will tell you this. If in 2 weeks' time we get Korthia, the new dungeon, we won't get the raid because the raid generally isn't available at the beginning. But if we get Korthia, we get the new mega dungeon, we get most of the Covenant changes. In fact, I would argue the Covenant changes might be the most important because there's a multitude of changes that needs to happen. New additions to the Soulbinds, new additions to the Conduits. There's a whole list of things that's being added in patch 9.1. And if we get the more changes right from the start, I can see a world in which 3 months at the most, so from 2.5 months to 3 months, the new expansion comes out. That gives us, I believe, June. I believe that gives us June. Yeah, because if you look at it, you have April the 14th, the PTR starts. You have May the 14th. You have June, July. That gives us about July, beginning of July, maybe middle of July for 3 months. That's about it, right? So that leaves us with July. That's if we go 2.5 to 3 months from PTR to live. If we get all of those things at the very start of the PTR. Will we get all of those things at the very start of the PTR? Doubtful. Couple of reasons for this. At BlizzCon, they showed us nothing. We saw none of Korthia, bar a couple of screenshots. We saw nothing of the raid, bar a few select sort of flyovers, which wasn't really even in-game flyovers. We saw none of the zone changes. We saw very few, very little information on Covenant changes, new Soulbinds, new Conduits that might be added. We saw almost nothing. They showed us basically almost nothing. They spent a lot of time talking about the story and how the story will move forward. They also showed us nothing of the new raid. So that means that at the time of BlizzCon Line, at the time of them recording BlizzCon Line, none of those areas was in a state that could actually be shown. The state of these things were just unshowable. There was nothing to put out because you would have gotten most likely a lot of the grayscaling where the zone hasn't even been filled in yet. You would get a lot of empty zones with no mobs walking around, a lot of buggy places that doesn't really work yet. So Blizzard just didn't show us anything at BlizzCon. Now, BlizzCon was what, 2 months ago? At this point, here's the problem. Do you think that within 2 months, Blizzard goes from having nothing available to show at BlizzCon Line to having everything available for game testing? Natalie Frost, the problem is there's always going to be misinformation. People don't necessarily know how a company wants to function, and they also don't really give a shit to learn how a company should function. So as someone who used to work for Blizzard, I would argue pay no attention to it. I don't. Whenever I see people saying something outrageous about Blizzard Entertainment or about Activision and Blizzard Entertainment, I usually just go, all right, fine. Not much I can do, right? It's not really my job to educate in that department because I myself don't really know, right? I know what I know based on some discussions with people who work for Blizzard. And that alone proves that a lot of things that people believe about Blizzard isn't true. But then at the same time, I don't know it well enough to say, yeah, clearly, right? Clearly they're just wrong. So I would say just ignore it and just go with it. Okay, so I think it's safe to say, anyone in chat right now, is there anyone in chat right now that believes 100% that Blizzard can go from having nothing available at BlizzCon to having everything testable 2 months later, 2.5 months later? All right. Now my question is there anyone in chat that believes wholeheartedly that this expansion or this patch will only spend 2.5 months on the PTR? 2.5 months, that's it. Within 2.5 months, we will get patch 9.1. Is there anyone that believes that that's going to happen? My best guess is that at the start of PTR, we most likely get some of Korthia. Most likely not going to get the dungeon. Most likely not going to get many or all or any of the changes yet on the Maw. We might see a lot of the changes to the covenants and the new soulbinds, new conduits. Those are things that we will start seeing. But I think we're going to get the full experience probably 1.5 to 2 months into the PTR is when the full experience will finally be available. I think, and this is literally big brain sort of headcanon here, but I think the reason the PTR is being rushed as much as it is now is to continue hype. It's to preserve the hype for Shadowlands. Blizzard themselves know that it's too long with no new content. You can see it from content creators. There are so many content creators that is running out of content to actually put out there. By the way, Mike, they are behind. This has been confirmed. Blizzard is behind on, while they work ahead of time, they are very, believe me when I tell you, they don't have the next expansion ready yet. They have a very small group of people right now working on the next expansion. At least according to the people that I've spoken to that works for Blizzard Entertainment, they usually have a very small team that works on the next expansion by the time the expansion comes out. And then once the expansion is sort of settled, Team B moves in to take over all of the patch design and things like that. And then, of course, Team A moves to the new expansion. Team A, as far as I'm aware, and Natalie can probably throw a little bit more insight into this, but as far as I'm aware, Team A does not work on patches. Team A usually moves on to the next expansion, whereas Team B takes care of patches, patch design, all of that sort of thing. But they wouldn't have started with full-blown development yet on the next expansion. That will happen a little bit later on, where everyone now, the whole Team A moves over to new expansion and Team B finishes off the expansion. But okay, let's just quickly think about this logically, because that's all we have at the moment. We can only think critically about this and think logically about what needs to happen within this time frame that we have for the PTR. Blizzard needs to add and test new soulbinds, new conduits. Blizzard needs to fix some of the dead conduits, of which there are many. Some of the dead soulbinds, of which there are many. Probably going to see a bunch of reworks on a lot of the existing conduits and a lot of the existing soulbinds. All of these needs to be fixed. We're probably going to see a couple of classes having some kind of change in how their abilities function, the Covenant ability specifically, and the class ability, and how all of this is meant to play into the grander scheme of things, if you will. Okay, so these are all things that Blizzard needs to do. Blizzard then needs to deal with a whole slew of new renown levels that needs to be added. These renown levels needs to be accompanied by quests, needs to be accompanied by story, needs to be accompanied by transmogs or, cosmetic items, needs to be accompanied by sort of a progression system that goes into it, right? That should be the least hard thing that Blizzard can actually do within the renown system. That's just the covenants. We've not even started talking about the changes that's going to happen to the Maw. We know now that every single covenant is going to have a foothold in the Maw, and that we're going to be working to increase the foothold that our covenant has within the Maw. So the Maw is most likely going to undergo a whole slew of changes as it develops within patch 9.1. Then, of course, we have a full overhaul of Torghast. The fact that Taragu is being removed from Torghast at least signals to me that Torghast is being reworked. In what way, I don't know, but I think it's safe to say that for a lot of people, Torghast fell flat. I would like to see in chat right now, who likes Torghast? Okay, there seems to be a lot of people sort of, at least based on those who've answered, it seems to be a very mixed bag. Even the people that isn't anti-Torghast isn't necessarily for Torghast. I'll be honest, I like Torghast. I think it's fine, right? Torghast, in my opinion, does what it needs to do. I enjoy Torghast as a system. I do think that Torghast needs to be uncoupled from the rest of the game. It needs to become its own game. It should not be something that influences anything else, right? It should not influence anything else. No raider or PvPer should be forced to do Torghast. Torghast should be something similar to the Mage Tower, where it's its own thing. You do that if you want cosmetics. You do that if you just want to enjoy the game. You don't do it because you're upgrading your gear or because you need that in order to build legendaries. That's not what Torghast should be. So I imagine there is going to be a rework of the Torghast system in general, probably a rework of the Maw system as well, just to streamline a little bit more and not make it feel like such a chore, because right now I think the biggest complaint I hear from people when it comes to Torghast and when it comes to the Maw is it feels like a chore. It doesn't feel like a place that you want to go to. It feels like a place that you must go there, which of course is a big problem. No one should ever feel like they must do something in a game. You should feel like you want to do that something. Whether that's a grind or not doesn't fucking matter, right? It's an MMO. MMOs is famously grindy. Without a grind, an MMO is not an MMO. You need a grind. Every MMO has grinds. There are very popular MMOs that have tremendous grinds within it. But as long as the grind is something you want to partake in, it's something that is fun, and it's by choice, you should be perfectly fine doing those grinds. That's why I think it needs to be uncoupled. You can't force people into content. They must choose that. So you need a whole rework of that. You have an entirely new zone being added, Korthia, right? Korthia, new zone, new systems, new things that's going to have to take place there. You have a new mega dungeon that's being added. You have a new raid that's being added. That's not even talking about the PvP seasons or anything like that. We are legitimately just talking about the new additions of the game and the things that needs to change. I will legitimately suck off a hobo if they get it out in 2.5 months. I will I don't know how it will be done. 2.5 months, you cannot fucking do it. I don't think it's doable. I think there's too many elements. And by the way, all of this is Blizzard's fault. Let's just be very clear on this. None of this is the player's fault or just the way that it works. This is all Blizzard's fault. Because Blizzard, for some reason, decided a couple of years ago, a couple of expansions ago, to interlink every single system within the fucking game with every other system within the game. Blizzard decided that an MMO can't work with just a bunch of different playgrounds and allowing people to play in those playgrounds when they choose to play in those playgrounds. No. The playgrounds have to be interlinked and interconnected. In order to play in one, you have to play in the other one, right? So this is sort of a decision that Blizzard made. I don't know why. For the life of me, I cannot understand why this is a thing. I genuinely don't get it. But it seems to be what Blizzard wants to do. So I can't even say TLDR because it's already 21 minutes that we've been discussing this. But to break it down, my most, shall we say, optimistic view puts the launch of 9.1 in July. That's where I put it, in July. Midway July is where I think we will see 9.1 launch. I can see a world where I'm being very liberal and I'm being very optimistic, very, very optimistic, where end of June is a place where it could hit. My conservative estimation, and perhaps the estimation that I sort of believe in my own mind, is August. Halfway August, that's when we'll see the new patch launch. I expect that there's going to be a few delays. I expect that this PTR is going to be much longer because I do think that this PTR is in response to the content drought, not because it's ready. Blizzard knows that a new PTR immediately brings new people in, right? More people want to come play. People want to test out the PTR. People are very excited. The content creators stop making content again. All the content creators is once again on board. Let's do this. And Blizzard knows this. They're not stupid, right? So I think this PTR is sort of meant to stem the bleeding up until the point where they can release patch 9.1. I'd love to hear what you guys think, but as far as I'm concerned, I do not see it launching June. Definitely not June. Definitely not May. Yeah, fuck. July, most likely. July, with bugs. Without bugs, most likely August. There's too many things. There's just too many things. Chat, what do you think?